I don't care that you're fasting. That's your business. That's your personal beliefs, but that's not going to stop me from eating my sandwich, right? There's so much wrong with Islam. And if you make the slightest misstep, that's it. You're burning in hell for eternity. They'll be entering into our media, entering into our education system. They used to take gay people and tie them on the back of motorcycles and drive around the city until the people were mutilated and dismembered. Their minds are possessed with virtue signaling. They just feel so good about themselves, staring at their own navels.
What do you say about those reformers? Are they actually lulling the rest of us into a false sense of security?
The louder we get, the braver we get, the harder it will be for them. It is perfectly reasonable for you to be taken aback when you see somebody covered head to toe in black walking towards you. When I wore that, all I got was looks of shock and horror from people, children screaming and crying and running away from me.
Because you grew up in such an extreme environment, is it, in a way, kind of a personal vendetta? I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. Yasmine Mohammed, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I want to start by asking you really, I guess, the most fundamental question. What's wrong with Islam? And do you think it can be fixed?
How long do we have? What's wrong with Islam? There's so much wrong with Islam. The entire premise of Islam is wrong. There's both the scripture, what is written in the books, and then also, of course, how it's practiced. You can see very clearly what's wrong with Islam. As a woman, you can see how women are treated under Islam. The worst country in the world for women right now is Afghanistan. Historically, it's always a Muslim majority country. But of course, these days it's Afghanistan because of all of the Sharia that they are implementing, the Taliban are implementing into their laws. I think one of the worst parts of Islam is the fact that it's so totalitarian and it leaves no room for any kind of critical thinking, any kind of humanity, really. It expects all its adherents to be cyborgs that just do as they're told without thinking, even if what they're doing is harming themselves. In fact, there's an ayah in the Quran that says, even if you hate what Allah demands of you, you must do it because Allah knows best, right? So that's like referring to things like jihad and things like that. So the fact that it's so totalitarian to the point that someone like me, who was born and raised in Islam, who chooses to renounce the religion, a person like me should be killed. So that's what critical thinking gets you. That's what free thought gets you, murdered. And so, that's just one of the many reasons, one of the many things that are wrong with Islam. Just the way it doesn't allow for any kind of variation.
It sounds like you don't think it can be fixed then.
Islam is a doctrine. It's a religion. You can't fix it unless Gabriel is going to come down and be like, here's edits, here's, version 2, here's the next edition of the Quran. Muslims aren't going to listen, right? But, the fundamentalist ones. But the only hope here is that because it's such a difficult religion to follow, and like I said, it's so totalitarian, and Muslims act like such tyrants controlling each other, it actually pushes a lot of Muslim people out. And a lot of them start to just cherry pick through the religion. So right now you'll see a lot of female imams or gay imams. I mean, you don't see a lot of them because they get killed, but you see people trying to be a Muslim and then also, do things that are against Islam. But they're trying to sort of live in that gray area of still being individuals, still being who they want to be, but also maintaining the Islamic identity, maintaining the Muslim identity. So there is hope for, I guess, some Reform Muslims to cherry pick out the anti-Semitism, the racism, the violence, the misogyny, I don't know what's left, but they want to still keep a toe in that water.
I mean, in your book, Unveiled, you take care to separate Islam as the ideology from Muslims, effectively, as individuals. And you say that your criticism targets the former. But I do wonder, does that distinction break down in practice? Because even non-observant Muslims still identify with Islam as part of that cultural or personal identity. When I spoke with Mossab Hassan Youssef, he said exactly that. People who call themselves moderate Muslims or non-observant Muslims who don't obey those tyrannical rules, he said, well, they're not Muslims then. So how do you see the distinction? And shouldn't you be critical of individual Muslims in that case, because you believe that they're identifying with something that they obviously don't agree with?
Yeah, so he is right insofar as other Muslims do not recognize them as Muslims. And this can be the slightest variation. This could be a woman that wants to wear jeans instead of abaya, or who doesn't want to wear hijab, right? So making the smallest decision about your personal self, your beliefs, your body, your hair, anything, can make you, by the other mainstream Muslims, be considered not a Muslim. It's very easy for them to be like, you're not a Muslim, you're not a Muslim. Technically, you're not supposed to do that, but it's done all the time, right? It's very common for people to sort of renounce each other and to say that they should actually be killed. And you see this all the time with honor killings that are happening all over the world because Muslims have decided that they don't want to follow this specific edict of the religion. You have to take it whole, right? And if there's any part of it that you say, I don't believe in the anti-Semitism part, for example, or I don't believe in the homophobia part, for example, it's like, okay, well, you're not a real Muslim then, and you should be killed. So he's right that does happen. And am I critical of Muslims who believe these edicts or who do not criticize their own religion? Of course I am. But I'm also realistic, and I know what it's like in that religion. I know that if, the way I describe it in my book is a school of fish. You all have to move in unison for safety, for survival. And if you have the slightest variation of thought, it is dangerous. So the way that it's described in Islam is as-sirat al-mustaqim. It's a long, thin tightrope. They visualize it in Iran. They make it like a tightrope, and they make huge billboards in this city, across the country. So it's a tightrope, and below the tightrope are the fires of hell. So as a Muslim, you're taught that you have to walk this very tight, thin line. And if you make the slightest misstep, that's it. You're burning in hell for eternity. So when you're in that kind of environment, they're human beings at the end of the day. When there's that much anxiety, that much stress, that much panic, that much worry, that much indoctrination, you know what I mean? It's hard for people to speak out. And then I didn't even talk about the violence that happens, Mashal Khan in Pakistan was killed by his classmates in university simply because he was asking, I can't remember what the question it was. It was one of those basic questions you ask, like, so that means we're all children of incest or something like that. Like, he was just in his university classroom, he was asking these questions, and they beat him to death in his university. So you can't ever overestimate the danger of having any kind of criticisms, So that's why most of them stay silent, because they want to stay alive.
In that sense, it's also unusual as an ideology, because it doesn't just have rules, really strict and terrible ones for people who aren't good Muslims, but it also has rules for people who aren't Muslims at all, right? So many religions might have weird or outdated or anachronistic rules for their own adherents, but to have rules for Jews or punishments for Jews who aren't even trying to be Muslims also seems dangerous and extreme.
Yeah, and you know what? That really has a lot to do with how we respond to them. So the subtitle of my book is How the West Empowers Radical Muslims. So when they come into make these demands like, oh, all the food in this school cafeteria needs to be halal, or I don't want you guys celebrating Christmas, or, take down this Israeli flag, or whatever demands that they come in there and make. And they say, well, it's against my religion or against my belief, so therefore everybody should listen. The response should be no, right? But we don't respond that way. It's like, you can't blame a snake for being a snake. This is what they are. This is who they are. This is what they believe. And they're going to push their beliefs. And it's on us to have a red line. It's on us to have borders and to say, this is the boundary. You don't cross this boundary right here. And we don't have those. We just let them make all sorts of demands. And we say, don't eat in Ramadan. In London, there was all these videos of people posting of somebody eating on the bus or something, and a Muslim coming along and saying, oh, don't you know it's Ramadan and I'm fasting, you shouldn't be eating. And it's like, I don't care that you're fasting. That's your business. That's your personal beliefs, but that's not going to stop me from eating my sandwich, right? But the fact that we actually respond to it is the problem.
So do you think that, harsh as your message is seen by some, maybe it isn't actually harsh enough? I mean, isn't it basically a sign of cultural surrender that we in the West are actually willing to put up with this?
100%. This is my biggest frustration. I'm not going to look to these fundamental. I'm not going to sit down and have a conversation with a Hamas or ISIS or Taliban and be like, hey guys, let's live and let live. Like, that's ridiculous. We're not going to reach them. We're not going to get through to them. I was born and raised, I was married to an al-Qaeda terrorist. I understand how their brains work or fail to work. And so that should never be a thing. The way that Trump is meeting with Jolani, or the way that everybody is treating the Taliban as if they are like a legitimate government, all of that is nonsense and a waste of time. Like, these are terrorists and they want you dead. Any negotiation with them is pointless, because they're just going to lie and say what they need to say and do what they need to do to get what they want done. It is on us. It is absolutely on us. And I completely agree that it is a complete social surrender that's going on right now. And it's very frustrating. And since October 7th, I've seen quite a shift, actually, because what I have been saying for the past 10 years, it was from my perspective. And I would, in fact, have arguments with my friends who live in Tel Aviv, who would be telling me, come on, Yasmin, you're being a bit too harsh. They come in our homes, they work with us, they're like family. And I'm like, sure, okay, let's just end this conversation. Because there's no getting through to people. If they haven't seen it, they can't know it. You know what I mean? If you've never seen or experienced snow, like, you're not going to get it until you've experienced it, or whatever the thing is. After October 7th, unfortunately, the world has seen it, has experienced it. They get it. They understand it in the same way that they understood it after 9/11, right? And that has obviously worn off in America. It's like this unfortunate situation where it's like, do we need our own October 7th in every city across Europe, or every country across Europe, every city across America, before people start to realize what they're dealing with? But that's what's happening in America right now, right? We've got Jews being burned alive in Boulder, Colorado. We've got Jews being shot to death, the young Jewish couple in DC. That's what's happening now. That they have globalized the Intifada, as they said they were going to, as they're calling to all the time, which should be against the law, because they are calling for a genocide of people. But of course, as we saw with the university presidents, that may not qualify as something that violates the university rules. So it is on us. It's absolutely on us, Jonathan. We are the ones that are not standing firm against this hate and violence. And they have been so transparent. They have been so clear. They could not be more honest about what they want. They have said it they've been saying it since the 1920s. They've talked about the Muslim Brotherhood, all of the Islamists. So when I say Islamists, I mean like political Muslims. We know of the groups, but we don't know of all of the individuals that are parts of these groups. And these groups change names, So whether we're talking about Hamas or ISIS or al-Qaeda or, Boko Haram or Shabab, it goes on and on across the world. These are groups of political Muslims who want to spread Islam. Some of them are doing it through jihad. Some of them are doing it through actual violence, the way they did on October 7th. And some of them are doing it through more subversive means, more insidious means. So they'll be entering into our governments, entering into our media, entering into our education system. Oh my God. In America, have you seen the number one funder, foreign funder of American universities is Qatar? Like by billions in first place. Second place is unfortunately China. So it's also not good. But yeah, this is how they're infiltrating, and they're doing a great job of it because we are not even pushing back against it.
Now, all of this is very true. And I understand that your position comes from a very particular background. But is it possible, because you grew up in such an extreme environment and then kind of ended up moving into an even more extreme one with your forced marriage, that perhaps you've got a very negative view of Islam that some other Muslims don't? I mean, is it in a way kind of a personal vendetta?
So the message that I get more commonly than anything is people telling me that my story is quite not just common, but also almost benign. People think that it's an extreme story because of your perspective and where you're coming from and how you grew up. And so it seems like it's extreme. But if you grew up in Pakistan or Iran or in Saudi Arabia or, any one of the 57 Muslim majority countries, you'd read my story and you'd think, whoa, she's lucky. Like, what a fairy tale, So it really just depends on perspective. If you grew up in middle America to a, middle class family, yeah, sure, my story sounds extreme. Unfortunately, in the grand scheme of things, it's not an extreme story at all. As for it being a personal vendetta, I don't have anything to prove or anything to fight against. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help people to help themselves. I'm trying to help people to see things from different perspectives other than the bubble that they're living in, the navel gazing that they're involved in, and the unfortunate toxic mix of ignorance and arrogance that we have in the West. I'm trying to reach my fellow Western liberals and try to let them know, pay attention to what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. You're pretending that you are supporting, you're all excited, like, ooh, we're going to be the white saviors. I'm going to take care of this little minority group and feeling great about yourself. But think about that minority group that you are protecting with words like Islamophobia, words that were created in order to silence any criticism of Islam. And you are using these words like a perfect little useful idiot. These words were manufactured precisely because they sound like homophobia, xenophobia, transphobia, all of these other progressive words that are like meant to protect minority groups of people. And so they wanted a word that would be used basically to create bottom-up blasphemy laws, because they can't do top-down blasphemy laws the way they do in every other Muslim majority country. So in the West, how are they going to do it? Well, they have gotten all of these useful idiots to do the blasphemy controlling for them. And so they go around and they use these words, Islamophobia, silencing people. Who are you silencing? You're silencing dissidents from Iran and Saudi Arabia who are speaking out against these theocratic governments. You're speaking up against people like me who are fighting against child marriage and FGM and all of the misogyny in Islam. Who are you fighting against? You're fighting against gay people who are saying we shouldn't be killed just because of who we are. Who are you fighting against? Who are you silencing? It's really disheartening. Just in Canada, we had our oldest gay book club, oldest gay library. They just had an event where they were celebrating Hamas. So this is the kind of distortion, the kind of perversion that's going on, Gaza, where they used to take gay people and tie them on the back of motorcycles and drive around the city until the people were mutilated and dismembered. That's what they do to gay people. They throw them off of the highest rooftop. According to the religion, you take them to the highest point, throw them down, and when they reach the bottom, you pelt them with stones, and just in case they're not already dead. That's what happens. And then these same people are doing like Queers for Palestine and having supportive Hamas presentations going on in their bookstores. It's mind-blowingly stupid. So they are just so high and mighty on their holier than thou train, trying to act, like I said, like the white liberal saviors, that they're not even thinking about who is it that you're protecting? Who is it that you're saving? The people that want you dead?
And with people like Greta Thunberg now trying to get into Gaza, is that really just an example of this kind of Western liberal stupidity? What's your message to her?
I mean, how many times have we seen this, Jonathan? How many times have we seen this in Gaza, in Pakistan, in all over, where they're like, we're all one. People are all good. They even remember the ones that went to the ISIS camps, and they're like, yeah, we just need to talk to them. We just need to drink tea together. They are a bunch of idiots. And honestly, whatever happens to them, it's Darwin's law. Like it's just like, leave it to be, they shouldn't be reproducing anyway. People with that level of, zero level of, common sense. So it's really sad to see people doing this kind of thing. Like I said before, they are fighting for something that is against them. They are fighting for something that not only hates them, but something that wants them dead. So, how do you reach these people? Their minds are possessed. Their minds are possessed with virtue signaling. They just feel so good about themselves, staring at their own navels. And it's just, how do you get through to them?
So what about Jews? Because I have a lot of trouble as a Jewish person, and I'm vocal on these topics, speaking with other Jews. When you try to say the things you're saying, many of them have this kind of gut reaction that they don't want to criticize someone else's faith or another minority group, even if you can, in private, get them to admit that there are some really problematic things about that minority group's beliefs and actions. What do you think is the best way to communicate specifically with Jewish groups who have this inbuilt kind of, let's say, overdone empathy or politeness or manners or fear of doing to others what was done to them? How do you get through that?
Yeah, so the Canadian university professor Gad Saad has coined a phrase called suicidal empathy, and that really just describes it perfectly. It's that is the term that we need to start introducing in speech. People need to understand that that's what they are engaged in. And there comes a certain point where your compassion and your humanity and you're projecting onto the others who you are. And I saw this when I was in Israel. There's a real projection on Palestinians. They think that they are just like us, and they just want security, and they just want freedom, and they just want to live, comfortably and yada, yada, yada. No, that's what you want. That's not what they want. It's like the old fable of the man and the snake. This is really the best way to describe it. So the man takes the snake says, oh, I'm cold. Please hold me in your jacket. Keep me warm. I'm so sad. I'm so lonely. I'm so scared. And this man, because he's so empathetic and he's so kind and he's so compassionate and he's so giving, he takes the snake and he puts him in his jacket to keep him, this cold-blooded creature, warm. And what happens? The snake bites him. So you want to be compassionate and kind and giving and blah, 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 blah. There's going to be a certain point where you are going to look stupid, or even worse, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt your family, you're going to hurt your entire community. You could get yourself killed. So where is that? Where is that scale? Where is the point where you need to stop living in a la-la land of how you hope the world is and what you wish the world would be like, and start living in reality and taking a look at the truth It's difficult. I understand that. I know it's very sad to get to that point. It is really sad because we as humans want to believe that we are all redeemable. We are all good. We are all one. We all bleed red. You know what I mean? We want to believe these things, but there is evil among us. And if you're not willing to see that and recognize that, then you will be the lamb to the slaughter. You will be the easiest for them to pick out of the crowd because they're going to realize, this person is so caught up in their own empathy that they're going to be really easy for me to manipulate and control. So, you know, everybody needs to do some really hard soul searching and to get to that point where they have this radical acceptance of reality. And I will encourage everyone to pick up a book by Inat Wilf. I think it's called The War of Return.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent book. So well written, so well researched. And that is the kind of book. She also was like us, on the left, progressive, you know, two-state solution. They just want a homeland. They just want security and freedom and safety like the rest of us. She was there. And that's why this book is so poignant and important and relevant today, is because she's got a very logical, rational, no nonsense, removed emotion from it, where she's just showing you her progression from being in that sort of la la land state to accepting reality, accepting harsh truths.
Yeah, I think the thing that Inat Wilf says is that, you know, she came, as you said, from that position of being on the left, and I interviewed her and have spoken with her many times, and Gad Saad, so two great minds that you highlight there. And what you say is entirely in line with that, which is that you might start off from that position, but then when that snake bites you, you've got to learn pretty quickly or you're in trouble. It is suicidal.
Or, if I can interrupt you, Jonathan, when the snake bites others, because that's the problem, is we were always waiting for the snake to bite us and say, well, it's not me, I'm okay. And that is incredibly short-sighted. Sorry, please continue.
Well, no. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I sometimes tell this story that I saw a very young Benjamin Netanyahu tell in that film called King Bibi about his media training in his early days. He tells this story about two men running from a grizzly bear in the woods. And one man turns to the other guy and says, why are you running? He says, don't you know you can't outrun a grizzly bear? And the other guy says, I don't have to outrun the grizzly bear. I just have to outrun you. But it's exactly the same. We should be able to react when we see the snake or the bear biting and eating and killing someone else. So October the 7th is a prime example. It should have been a wake-up call to the rest of us. What happened in Amsterdam afterwards, or Dagestan, should have been a wake-up call. And yet people in the West still pretty much lured into some false sense of security. And I want to ask you on that. You've been quite critical about reformist efforts in Islam. I know that you interviewed Sheikh Paul Armstrong, who I actually also spoke to recently. And that video of you and him, it's really fiery. I mean, I have to say, what do you make of people like him? He says his is a classical Islam, though he's a convert to it. He says that everything else, all the bad stuff, 9/11, etc., it's a misreading, a misunderstanding, a misuse, an abuse. What do you say about those reformers? Are they actually lulling the rest of us into a false sense of security with this idea that Islam will be safe in the future?
Some of them are, yeah. Some of them will straight up lie. And that's really where I draw the line. So the reason why I had such frustration with Paul is because he was unwilling to just admit very basic truths about Islam. And there are reformers that I work with in my organization, the Clarity Coalition. In fact, the co-director with me, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, is a Muslim reformer. But he will straight up tell you, like, yeah, Islam is not compatible with American democracy. Yes, Islam is full of anti-Semitism, homophobia, sexism. He will tell you these things. He will say that, yes, it's true. What you see happening in Syria today, or in Afghanistan, or in Iran, or in all of these other countries, yes, those people are following the edicts of Islam. And what we have to do is we have to renounce those edicts. So that's the biggest difference. If somebody like Paul, who's saying, no, it's not a part of Islam. Those guys are just perverting our beautiful religion. Well, that's just a lie. You're just lying. Because if you've been a Muslim for 25 years and you're calling yourself a sheikh, then I would assume you would have more knowledge on the religion, and that you're just saying this because you're trying to placate the audience into thinking that the snake is not going to bite you, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad man and that he's doing this because he wants to fool people so that he can eventually be the snake that bites them. Not necessarily. He could be somebody who just really doesn't want there to be this kind of fear in the world, so he wants to calm people down. But that's, again, it's short-sighted, right? So the reality is that these things are in Islam. We have to accept that there's a reason why when you look across these 57 Muslim majority countries, you're seeing some very clear common threads. You know what I mean? You're not seeing what Paul is preaching. You're seeing a very different opposite thing that he's saying is not really Islam. What we have to do is we have to accept the reality of Islam and then say, this is problematic. Let's move forward from here. So the Muslim reformers who do that are the ones that I work with, the ones that I trust, the ones that I support, the ones that I hope they become much more successful and much louder and much more mainstream. But the ones who are not willing to admit the realities of Islam, who are still doing that thing that I did as a Muslim and that most Muslims do, which is just covering for the religion. I have no patience for that. It's basically dishonesty. That's the line for me, the difference between honesty and dishonesty.
So you've spoken a bit about what you want non-Muslims in the West to do, in a sense, to wake up and confront this. But what do you want Muslims to do then? Do you want them to leave Islam?
I mean, I would love to say I want them to wake up and confront this too, but I know how dangerous that is. I would hope that they would, at least in the safest way possible, at least in their homes with their own families, you know what I mean? Push and try to get people's minds to open, try to get people to think critically. I mean, even saying this, I know that that can be dangerous. You know, like I mentioned before, honor killings are very common. Honor violence is very common. So people have to be very careful when they're trying to push for any kind of critical thinking or any kind of free expression. But it has to be done. You know what I mean? Like there's so many of us out here putting our lives on the line, really, because we all know about Salman Rushdie, Charlie Hebdo, et cetera, et cetera. Any kind of criticism of the religion is dangerous. But the more of us that speak up, the less dangerous it becomes, right? So when there's only a few people that have got their heads raised, then it's easier to chop those heads off. But the more of us that raise our heads, the louder we get, the braver we get, the harder it will be for them. And honestly, you know, look at Iran. Look at the people in Iran. Like if you're looking for inspiration and motivation and really to be in awe at the resilience of the human spirit, look at the people of Iran. With the IRGC standing there with their guns, shooting people down, leaving dead bodies filling the streets. They're still out there. They're still out there burning their hijabs, burning the pictures of the Ayatollah. They're still speaking their mind. And it's really to the point, you know, when you've got the boot on your neck for so long, there comes a point where the rage overrides the fear. And that's what happened with me. And that's what happened with I could see that's what happened with the people of Iran. The rage finally overrides the fear. We're not there in the West. We're still in fear. And it's unfortunate that as long as people still feel safe in their own homes or in their own schools or in their own, you know, public institutions, they're not going to look to what is happening in all of these countries around them and recognize this is growing and it's getting stronger and it's in our backyard. I just saw this morning at a tube station in London, a Jewish man was attacked by 5 or 6 people and he was hospitalized. We just finished talking about the attacks that happened across the United States as well. In Canada, we've had the anti-Semitic attacks go up by 670%. since October 7th. The same synagogues, the same schools just getting attacked over and over and over again. So what are we waiting for? When is our rage going to kick in? That's what needs to happen. Do we need an October 7th over here? Do we need another 9/11? I hope not. I hope that at sometime very soon, either our common sense, our rage, or even just our will to survive kicks in above the fear. Because right now we're all in fear.
And I'm concerned that it's not just fear. There's also a great deal of denial. And I'll give you an example, actually. Just this morning, I was in the local Sainsbury's, the supermarket down the road, and a woman walked in who was literally covered entirely in black. There wasn't even a slit for her eyes. And I found it really weird. I still do whenever I see a woman dressed that way. But I'm aware that it's politically completely incorrect where I live to even look, never mind to say anything to anyone privately or publicly. And yet the idea that in 2025, there are women who, as part of a religious set of rules, are literally entirely cloaked in black. The idea that that's something you can't question is strange to me. Now, you had that experience as somebody that was in an abusive relationship, an abusive religion. How does it feel to be on the other side of that black cloak? And what do you think people like me who see it and are shocked should do and say?
It is perfectly reasonable for you to be taken aback when you see somebody covered head to toe in black walking towards you. You can't see their face. You can't even see their eyes. It's a normal human reaction. It's literally a dementor walking towards you right now. So it's natural. When I wore that, all I got was looks of shock and horror from people, children screaming and crying and running away from me. So what are you gonna blame them? Of course that's what's gonna happen. So I felt like a monster. I felt dehumanized, but I wasn't blaming the people for reacting the way they were reacting because it's natural, right? But I was sad for myself. Like I was horrified within myself that I couldn't smile. I couldn't let them see that I wasn't a danger, that I was forced to wear this. You know what I mean? And I'm not happy about this. I can't communicate to them in any way, shape, or form. I'm like a ghost walking amongst people. I can see them, but they can't see me. And just like a ghost, they're scared when they see this apparition coming towards them. So I don't want you to ever feel... See, we do this gaslighting quite a bit. And in fact, I saw this happen on October 8th. I saw this happen on September 12th. This happens very commonly where we have a visceral reaction to something that is scary and we are admonished for it. And we're told like, oh, no. We have to think about how the person who just traumatized me is feeling. We have to have so much compassion while we are actively bleeding and in our own trauma. You're supposed to be paying attention to basically the perpetrators, and having empathy for them. That's horrific. That's so evil and inhuman to do that to people. So first and foremost, for you to be taken aback, natural human reaction, nothing to feel guilty about. The second part of that, however, is when you said you don't want to speak out against it or you don't want to talk about it because of the climate that has told you that you are a bad person if you have something to say about it. That's just the gaslighting, right? It turns you into the oppressor and it turns the oppressor into the victim. It's playing this like sleight of hand trick. And you have to resist that, Jonathan. Everybody has to resist that. And you have to be able to say, no, actually, this is horrible. This is dehumanizing. This is perverted. This is wrong. These women should not be covered head to toe in black bags. Of course they shouldn't be covered head to toe in black bags. Like, why is this even a conversation? Like, of course, they should be able to live freely and breathe freely like everybody else. They should be able to smile and communicate and be part of society just like everybody else. Why are they being relegated to this inhuman level? Of course you should speak out against it. And if you don't, then that takes us back to that fear that I was talking about when I said we are all in fear. People don't speak out against it because they're all in fear of all the policing that's going to go on, all of the useful idiots that are going to chime in with their Islamophobia. And so you have to resist that. You have to push against that. And like I said, look to the people of Iran and look how they push and look how they resist, and take a page from their book. I'm not asking you to stand in front of the IRGC and burn a hijab. I'm asking you to speak your mind and to express yourself when something is clearly wrong and we are clearly treating human beings with disdain and it's horrible to see. Speak out against it. You have every right to speak out against it. And don't allow yourself to be silenced by the useful idiots.
So why do you think so many Westerners, conversely, are actually finding Islam alluring? It's a religion that a lot of people are actually converting into. And I know that, for example, in British jails, it's something that is happening a lot. But even free people in this era converting to a religion that might have seemed seductive to kind of 7th century desert dwellers, but all the things that Islam, when I read the Quran, offered, they're kind of available pretty easily these days without the need for the whole set of rules that go with it. So, you know, you and I can say it looks horrific to see women dressed that way, to see the subjugation of women, things like that. And yet there are literally Western women signing up for this now, where I live, where you live. What's going on?
Yeah. So Islam is a very simple religion at its core, and it really does hit the most base lizard brain, unevolved parts of us. Really, it does. So when you think of how it entices men, what does it tell them? Go kill for me, and then I'll give you 72 virgins that will just like automatically re-virginify, and you can just have sex with as many women as you want for eternity, right? So when I say it's reaching the most base, unevolved parts of us, that's what I mean, right? And so people like Andrew Tate, you know, when he converted to Islam, I wasn't surprised. It's the same thing. The human trafficking that he's doing and using women that he's doing, like, it's no surprise. Now he has a religion that can support him, that can protect him in the way he's treating women, that in fact encourages this behavior. So, you know, that's the kind of people that it attracts. So when you talk about prisons, that does not surprise me at all. Who are in prisons? Criminals, you know, obviously, murderers, not your upper echelons of society that are involved in, like, you know, critical thought and deep thinking. So they are going to be attracted to these very base parts of their humanity that this religion reaches. And the same is true for women. Insofar as now a lot of women are feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to be the boss woman. I have to make money. I have to be 50-50. I have to also do all of the work in the house. I have to do this. I have to do that. There's so much pressure on me. There's so much expectation on me. And what does Islam tell a woman? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anything. All you have to do is keep your husband happy, make babies. That's it. That's your only role in this world. So to them, it looks simple. It looks, ooh, that looks really nice and easy. But what they don't tell you is that most of these women that convert are out of that religion within about 5 years. And a lot of them actually get trapped because of having children and not wanting to leave their children behind, right? But what they don't realize very early on is that, yeah, you don't have to do anything, but it's like you're a prisoner. You are a prisoner. Somebody will provide everything for you. That's great. Oh, my husband is the only one that has to work. I don't have to work. I only have to take care of the children. I only have to make him happy. I don't think they understand what a deal with the devil that they're making, because they're just seeing it as something that is like, initially they see it as enticing. But after a while, you start to realize, who am I? Where am I? What am I? I am just a thing that is here to serve this man and to make babies. And then that's it. My purpose has been, I have no more purpose in this world. And so it's incredibly hollow, incredibly unsatisfying to be a woman in a Muslim family.
Are there any parts of the Quran or indeed of Islam that speak to you positively? Were there any parts you like?
There are cultural parts that I like, cultural parts of Arabs that I like. I like the food. I like the music. I like the dancing. The dabka is pretty fun. You know what I mean? Things like that. But they have nothing to do with the religion. So the religion has colonized these countries, and has basically taken over all of their cultural aspects and made it seem as if it's Islamic, but it's not. These things were there before Islam and they will be there after Islam. So yeah, there's a lot of those cultural aspects I really enjoy and I really appreciate, but there's nothing about the religion that I miss or that I want in my life, or that I could honestly say that I appreciate. No.
And so when you talk about moderates or reformers who you work with, for example, through your organization, what's the point? Because ultimately they're moderates and reformers of an ideology that you see as effectively, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, totally rotten, totally corrupted, totally evil. What's the point in the reformers then?
Well, that's their business, not mine. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to believe in Judaism in order to support Jewish people. I don't have to believe in Christianity in order to support Christian people. But I'm not going to support every Jewish person. I'm not going to support every Christian person. And I'm certainly not going to support every Muslim person. So there are people within religions that I don't necessarily agree with, that we have common ground and we have shared beliefs and we have shared goals and we have shared missions. And that's what makes this world a beautiful place. I don't want us all to be believing the same thing and to be, that's what Islam wants, right? Islam wants us all to be praying to Allah 5 times a day. And anybody who doesn't should be killed. I've renounced that faith and that ideology, and I want nothing to do with that. I want to live in a world where we can encourage each other to think in different ways and to see things from different perspectives and to grow and to learn and to evolve. And I don't want us all to believe all of the same things, but I do want us all to be able to work together and to respect each other. I mean, on my podcast, quite often I have people on who I disagree with vehemently. I mean, I just had a Palestinian politician come on and tell me there's no anti-Semitism in the Middle East. And I was like, really? That's like saying there's no sand in the Sahara. Like, of course there is. But we can still have a conversation. We can still find the places where there is agreement, and we can still end the conversation respectfully. That's all I'm asking for. I come from a religion that says if you don't believe what I believe, then you should be killed. That's what they want. They want me to be killed because I no longer believe in Islam. So who would I be? Like, how could I possibly be like them and expect others to, or want others to think the same as me or to believe the same things as me? I don't. I just want us all to be respectful of each other's differences. We don't even have to see eye to eye. We just have to respect each other's differences and not want to kill each other because of our differences in belief.
Amen to that. Well, let me ask you then about Palestinian politicians and Palestinian identity. Do you see that there is effectively a Palestinian identity and a Palestinian people and a Palestinian national aspiration that is separate from anti-Semitic, Islamic, jihadist, Jew hatred and the elimination of Israel? And if so, where are you seeing that in Palestinian society?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Of course I do. Yes, my father is from Gaza, and the Palestinians do have a very tight-knit, very deep feeling of their Palestinianness, for sure. But what you are talking about now, which is the Palestinianism, is a completely different thing. So there's the culture of Palestinians in Gaza, and, you know, like I mentioned, the dabka and the olive trees and all of that stuff. They've got their own specific way of making mahshi and whatever. Or their clothing and their music and all that stuff. That's all the cultural aspects. That's one thing. However, this virulent anti-Semitism, this genocidal anti-Semitism, that is Palestinianism. That's like this evil ideology that really only wants to see the eradication of Israel and doesn't care about Palestinians, doesn't care about all those cultural aspects I just talked about. They would kill every last Palestinian in their aim to kill every last Jew. It doesn't matter. They're all going to go to heaven anyway. They're all going to be martyrs. So it doesn't mean anything to them. Right. In fact, they'll give away candies and chocolates when one of them dies because they're going to heaven. It's in celebration. So this people that adhere to this ideology like Hamas is, which is that they want to see from the river to the sea, all of it being Arab, all of it being Muslim, every Jew eradicated, the state of Israel no longer exists. All of that horrible, evil stuff is being not only supported by people in Palestine, but it's being supported by people all over the Muslim world. And you've got funders like Iran and Qatar that are funding this kind of hate. Now, the Palestinians that I mentioned over here that are all about the culture and stuff, like my dad never, ever, ever was anti-Semitic. He never hated Jews. He never hated Israel. He loved his homeland. He loved his people, and he wanted to see his people flourish, right? But do you think he could speak his mind without being hijacked and attacked and belittled and threatened by all of these guys over here who told him that he was a traitor, that told him he was a Jewish Scrooge, you're getting paid by Israel, blah, 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 right? So it's like two different things that we're talking about. Yes, Palestinians are here as well. Of course, a lot of Palestinians support Hamas, but also Qataris and Iranians and, you know, Pakistanis and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, this is a much, 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 much bigger pot over here, which is very strongly funded. And then this group over here of the Palestinians that are just interested in maintaining their cultural identity, they're unfortunately the much smaller group and the very viciously attacked group by the Palestinianists, by the violent jihadis, basically. And even if they're not violent, they support the violence, and they believe in the violence.
Do you get called far right for all of this? And if so, I guess the follow-up is, you know, are you worried about the far right in that a lot of the people who are very prominent in talking about criticism of Islam, maybe not from a background like yours, but from one outside of the faith, are often seen as far right, rightly or wrongly? I'm thinking of people like Tommy Robinson in the UK, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and these people are kind of dismissed. They're called Islamophobes, as you said, to dismiss them, but they're also called far right. So what's worse, far right extremism or Islamic extremism?
Well, you know, it's not, this is not a choice I want to make.
Me too. I mean,
which pile of, you know, is it, would you prefer bull crap or horse crap? You know what I mean? Like, it's not, this is not a decision that I don't want to choose between those two. They're both problematic, obviously, but these slurs of far right, Islamophobic, this and that, the other thing. I get called every name in the book. Those are just meant to silence me. And it's almost laughable that you're speaking to a woman who survived with my toddler escaping from a terrorist, and then my mother who tried to kill me, and you think that using your little words is going to silence me? Absolutely not. I risked my life to be able to stand here and to speak, and I will speak. And I need to be heard. I want to be heard because I do not want people to go through what I went through. I've seen the dark side. You don't need to see it. You don't need to experience it. Listen to the survivors of October 7th. You don't have to be a survivor of whatever new date that is going to happen in the future. You know what I mean? You don't have to experience it yourself. Listen to us as we are warning you. Pay attention, you know? And even if I can plant seeds in people's heads, they don't have to grow immediately, but at least the seeds are being planted. And you know, the fact that I have a father from Palestine and a mother from Egypt, and I've got an Arabic last name, and I've got the skin and the hair and the name to go with it, that in some ways allows me to be able to speak more than somebody like Tommy Robinson or other people who may or may not be. Some people on the right are legitimately concerned, and they're being attacked with slurs. So they start to end up looking like they are right-wing haters, bigots, you know what I mean? And sometimes those are people who are just legitimately speaking out of a legitimate concern, but they're silenced by these words. But sometimes they really are bigots and haters, and they really do want to make sure that the demographics don't change, and that these countries stay predominantly white, or whatever the case may be for white nationalists or whoever truly is on the far right. So it's muddy. It's muddy out there. It's tricky, but I am not going to, whatever it is, I'm not going to be silenced by these slurs. They can throw them at me as much as they want. And I get them left and right. Let's be honest. People from the left are calling me, I don't even know if I can say this on your show, but they're calling me a sand N-word. They tell me that I have betrayed my race, that I have betrayed my people. They call me all sorts of horrible things. So I'm getting it from all sides, left, right, and center. And that's okay. Speak your mind. Go ahead. Say what you need to say. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to slow me down. It's not going to change my speech. I'm still going to say what I need to say, and you go ahead and say what you need to say too. That's fine with me. But it becomes problematic when these slurs work, and when it actually silences people, and when people are actually too scared to speak up because they don't want to be called mean words. And I always have to remind them, like, this is just the beginning. Mean words is just the beginning. If you can be placated by mean words, then they don't have to move on to step 2. Do you know what I mean? They've already conquered you. You're already done. And so we have to be really, really concerned about how common it is for people to just concede and to just basically allow themselves to be silenced. It's a very quiet, slow conquering, as Douglas Murray said. You know, it's the strange death of Europe, and it's incredibly concerning.
Who is winning that ideological war then, and how?
Well, you know, unfortunately, they are winning right now. They are winning. It's really, really difficult. It's like whack-a-mole. I can't keep up with people sending me all of the different things that are happening all over the world all the time. And how they are winning is very simple. They are already a mob. They are already a very strong cult. And so, for example, if we have an issue in Canada where one of our politicians wears a keffiyeh, for example, and another politician will speak up against that, the Muslims are already organized, not just the Muslims and their useful idiots. There doesn't need to be a message that goes out that says, hey guys, write to your MPs and support this politician that was wearing the keffiyeh. There's no bulletin that needs to go out. They already know what they need to do. they're already part of the cult. They're already part of the mob. They've already got their pitchforks and they've got their torches ready. And so they react. Like I said in my book, School of Fish, everybody reacts. And what are we doing on the other side, right? We're going to think about it. We're going to talk about it. We're maybe going to write an article about it. We're not reacting in the same kind of aggressive, loud, attacky kind of way that gets noticed, right? And so there's that part of it, the fact that it's a huge organized mob. And then the other part of it is the funding that they're getting from places like Qatar and Iran that is allowing this huge propaganda machine to continue. And I'll add a third reason why they're winning. A third reason why they're winning is because they've been single-mindedly involved in this pursuit for decades. We're only just now getting started, really. Think about it. What has been happening in the past 70 odd years? Israel has been involved in technology, medicine, arts, infrastructure, building their country. And what has Gaza been involved in? Building tunnels, building bombs, right? So where has our focus been for all of these past decades? In two completely different places. They have never wavered. Their focus has always been in this direction, and it continues to be in this direction. Whereas our focus is going into all sorts of different endeavors to push humanity forward and to progress us. And so that's also a part of it, is we are really late to this game.
Well, that's maybe a depressing note for us to end on, but I do thank you very much for being so frank about it and for being a leader in this fight, because I think it's one that we're all in, whether or not people know it already or not. And so voices like yours are just so important to get people awake and then to get them acting and moving and doing what they need to do. So once again, thank you so much for everything you do. And thank you for spending the time with me and telling me more about it. I hope we can keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. My absolute pleasure.